Okay, now back in the app component. This implementation has a couple of issues. The first one is that we are subscribing to this observable in the constructor of our component. And as I explained in my Angular Basics course, we should not have expensive operations in constructors. Constructors should be very lightweight. So anytime we want to access remote services, we need to do that in ng-on-init method. The second issue with this implementation is that here we are subscribing to this observable, and this subscription is going to stay in memory, even after the component is destructed. So this is going to create memory leak in your application. In other words, it's going to increase memory consumption. So here we need to get the subscription and unsubscribe from it when this component is destroyed. So on the top, I'm going to import on-init and on-destroy from Angular core. And then add ng-on-init here. I'm going to move this piece of code inside ng-on-init. Now here we don't have access to AF because we didn't declare it as a private field in our class. So I'm going to add private here and then prefix this with this dot. I'm also going to create a private field called subscription and set it to the return value of the subscribe method. So this dot subscription equals like that. And finally in ng-on-destroy, I'm going to call this dot subscription dot unsubscribe. So this is the proper way to work with an observable. But as you can see, it's a little bit tedious. You're writing a lot of code just to render a simple list. Is there a simpler way? Of course there is. So instead of subscribing to this observable and setting this cousins array, we can use this observable itself directly in our template. So I'm going to remove this subscription. Now let's take a look at the return type of the list method. It returns a Firebase list observable. So this is an observable that comes with Angular Fire, and it basically wraps the standard observable that comes with RxJS. So internally, it's an observable, but it has some additional methods that you're going to learn about throughout this section. Now, instead of setting subscription here, I'm going to set cousins to this return value. So cousins is now a Firebase list observable, not an array. Save. Now back in the browser, we have a new error here. ng4 only supports binding to iterables such as arrays. So we changed our cousins from an array to an observable, and that's why we're getting this error. How do we solve it? We go back to our template and apply the async pipe to this expression. So pipe async. And that means data in this cousins observable is going to arrive asynchronously. Now this pipe internally is going to create a subscription, and then it's going to remove that subscription once the component is destroyed. And that means back in the component, we no longer need ng-on-destroy here. And we can also remove this subscription here. So the simplest way to render a list is to call the list method and store the results in a field or property in a class. And this is an observable. Or more accurately, it's a Firebase list observable. Then in the template, we apply the async pipe to our expression. Now let's look at the result. Beautiful. Now if I go back in Firebase and add a new node here with the ID 3 and the value, let's say Chinese. Now back in our Angular app, you can see our list is refreshed automatically. And that's the beauty of Firebase. As another example, I can go back to Firebase and delete this node, Chinese. Now back in the Angular app, it's gone. We achieved all that with a single line of code. Without Firebase, if we wanted to implement a page that would refresh automatically, we would have to write a lot more code.